This girl was humiliated, but 2 minutes later, he discovers she's blind, and what happens next is shocking. Comment what you think will happen and subscribe to my channel to support my work. The morning was chilly in downtown Chicago, and the scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the aroma of coffee wafting from Mrs. Thompson's bakery. On the sidewalk, seated on a piece of soiled cardboard, a small, thin girl clutched an equally scrawny mutt to her chest. Her eyes, hidden behind broken glasses patched with duct tape, didn't move. They never moved. The sign hanging around her neck was as dirty as her clothes. "Hungry, please help." The letters, written by some stranger, were already fading. Beside her, the mutt, whom she called Lucky, licked her hands, chapped from feeling around for lost coins. "Lucky, you're hungry too, right?" the girl whispered, stroking the dog's sparse fur. "It's been 2 days since we've had a real meal, but someone will help us soon. They have to." Lily, that was her name, though almost no one knew it, knew every sound on that street. The clinking of cups in the bakery, the hurried footsteps of people passing by, some avoiding her as if she were an inconvenient obstacle, others pretending not to see her. She had been there so long that she had become part of the urban landscape, like the lampposts or the trash cans. The roar of a powerful engine broke the morning routine. A high-end car parked in front of the bakery, and the sound of expensive shoes hitting the pavement echoed like a foreboding storm. Lily flinched instinctively, pulling Lucky closer. "This is ridiculous!" An angry male voice cut through the air. "Downtown is turning into a real freak show. Even the kids have no shame anymore." The words hit Lily like stones, but she remained still, a habit learned on the streets. The less you move, the less people notice you. The less they notice you, the less they hurt you. The man, Lysander, a 34-year-old businessman known for his arrogance and coldness in business, approached the bakery entrance. His impeccable Italian suit and leather briefcase betrayed his social standing. As he passed Lily, he tripped over Lucky, who was lying near the girl's feet. "What the hell?" he exclaimed, shoving the dog with his foot. "If you can't see where you're going, you shouldn't be here." The silence that followed was heavy, awkward. People passing by lowered their eyes, some stopping to watch the scene. It was then that a lady selling flowers on the corner approached. Her weathered face twisted into an expression of disapproval. "She's blind, mister," the florist said in a low but firm voice. "Completely blind since birth." Lysander's face paled. His hands, which were holding the leather briefcase, began to tremble slightly. He looked again at the girl, now noticing the details that his anger had ignored. The fixed eyes behind the broken glasses, the way her hands groped the air, searching for Lucky. That's when it happened. Lily, who hadn't eaten in 2 days, felt the world spin. Her small, dirty hands lost their strength, and her body began to lean to the side. The sign around her neck swayed one last time before she fainted. Lysander saw the exact moment when the girl began to fall. Without thinking, he dropped his expensive briefcase to the ground and crouched down, catching her before she hit her head on the sidewalk. For the first time in his life, his hands, accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts, were holding something truly precious, a life. Lily's body was cold, too light for a child her age. Lucky, barking desperately, tried to lick the girl's face. The florist quickly approached, her calloused hands touching the child's forehead. "She's freezing," the lady exclaimed. "She needs a doctor urgently." Lysander looked at his Rolex watch, then at the briefcase on the ground, thinking about the important meeting he had in half an hour. Millions were at stake in that meeting. His career could take a significant leap, but something inside him was different. For the first time in years, money didn't seem so important. "Could someone grab my briefcase, please?" he asked, standing up with Lily in his arms. "I'm taking her to the hospital." As he walked towards his high-end car, with the unconscious girl in his arms and Lucky faithfully following his steps, Lysander didn't know that that moment would change his life forever. He didn't imagine that that child he had humiliated minutes before would be the key to awakening something that had been dormant in his heart for so long. What he didn't know, as he carefully placed Lily in the back seat of his car and allowed Lucky to get in too, was that this wasn't just an act of charity or redemption. It was the beginning of a journey that would transform not only the life of that blind girl, but mainly his own empty and lonely existence. The florist watched the car drive towards the hospital, a discreet smile on her wrinkled lips. Sometimes, she thought, someone needs to stumble to start seeing the right path. The private hospital where Lysander took Lily was one of the most expensive in the city. The immaculately white and silent corridors contrasted with the dirty and fragile figure of the girl in his arms. At the reception desk, the attendants exchanged glances of astonishment when the businessman, known for his coldness, entered carrying a street child. "I need help." His voice, normally controlled, now trembled. "She fainted. She's very cold." A medical team quickly brought a stretcher, and Lily was taken for emergency care. Lucky tried to follow, but was stopped by a security guard. The dog began to bark desperately, scratching the polished marble floor. "The dog can't stay, sir," said the security guard, already preparing to expel the animal. "He stays," Lysander replied with an authority that brooked no argument. "Tie him up outside if you have to, but he's not leaving." The next few hours were a whirlwind. Doctors went in and out of the emergency room, nurses rushed with IV bags, and Lysander remained seated in the waiting room, his expensive suit rumpled, his tie loose, staring fixedly at the door through which Lily had disappeared. His cell phone wouldn't stop ringing. The important meeting, the furious partners, the millions in lost deals. But he couldn't care less. "Mr. Lysander?" A doctor approached after what seemed like an eternity. "Can we talk?" The diagnosis was frightening: severe malnutrition, dehydration, several poorly healed wounds, and a respiratory infection starting. "She needs to be hospitalized," the doctor explained, "but we need her documents and the authorization of her guardians." That's when reality hit him like a punch. He didn't know anything about that girl. Not even her full name, her exact age, or her story. How would he explain to the doctors that he had simply picked her up from the street? I don't have her documents," he admitted, feeling helpless for the first time in many years. The doctor frowned. "Sir, without documentation and a legal guardian, we will have to contact Child Protective Services. It's standard procedure." "No!" The answer came out louder than he intended. I'll take responsibility. I'll pay for everything. I'll sign whatever is needed." As he signed a stack of papers assuming temporary responsibility for Lily, Lysander wondered what he was doing. Why did he care so much? Why didn't he simply let the system take care of that child? But something inside him knew the answer. For the first time in his life, he was doing something that really mattered. When he was finally able to enter the room where Lily was hospitalized, his heart ached. The girl looked even smaller in the hospital bed, connected to tubes and monitors. Her eyes, now without the broken glasses, revealed an opacity that confirmed her total blindness. "Lucky?" was the first word she murmured upon regaining consciousness, her voice weak and scared. "He's outside," Lysander replied, surprised by the softness in his own voice. "He's safe." Lily turned her face towards his voice. You're the man who yelled at me on the street." Shame burned Lysander's face. "Yes," he admitted, "and I'm so sorry for that. Really sorry." A heavy silence settled in the room. Lily nervously fidgeted with the white sheets, as if trying to understand the texture. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked. It was a question he was still trying to answer himself. Because it was the right thing to do, he replied, knowing that the answer was insufficient. In the days that followed, Lysander practically moved into the hospital. He settled into an armchair in Lily's room, working on his laptop while watching her sleep. During the day, he tried to get her to eat, talk to the doctors, and even got special permission for Lucky to visit her for a few minutes. It was during these visits that he began to notice something extraordinary about Lily. Even without seeing, she seemed to perceive everything around her. She knew when a nurse was sad by the tone of voice, guessed when it was going to rain by the smell in the air, and always knew when Lysander was in the room, even if he didn't make a sound. "How do you do it?" he asked one afternoon, after seeing her correctly identify which nurse had entered the room just by the sound of the footsteps. "Do what?" she replied, genuinely confused. "Know so much about things without being able to see." Lily smiled, a smile that lit up her thin face. "It's because people think seeing is only with the eyes. But there's so much to feel. The smell, the sound, the way the air moves when someone passes by. It's like the world is talking to us all the time. You just need to learn to listen." Those words hit Lysander deeply. How many things hadn't he seen in his life, even having perfect eyes? How many people had he ignored? How many moments had he wasted chasing after profits and status? But not everything was positive discoveries. As Lily grew stronger physically, uncomfortable questions began to arise. Social workers wanted to know her origin, her family history. The doctors needed a complete medical history. And Lysander discovered that the girl was, officially, a ghost. No birth certificate, no school records, nothing that proved her existence. One night, while she was sleeping, an older nurse approached Lysander. "You know," she said in a low voice, "I've seen this girl before, a few years ago. She always came with a woman. I think it was her mother. The woman didn't look well. She said nonsensical things. Then I never saw them again." It was the first clue about Lily's past, and Lysander clung to it. But before he could investigate further, a new problem arose. The hospital began to receive anonymous calls, questioning the presence of a single businessman caring for a girl without documents. "Mr. Lysander," the hospital director called him into his office. "We need to talk about your situation with the girl. There are worrying rumors emerging." The businessman felt his blood run cold. He knew that his reputation, built over years, could be destroyed in a matter of days. But when he thought about abandoning Lily, about leaving her in the care of the system, something inside him rebelled. That night, sitting in the armchair in the hospital room, watching Lily sleep peacefully for the first time in days, Lysander made a decision that would change his life forever. No matter the cost, no matter the risks, he wouldn't abandon that child. What he didn't know was that his decision would be tested in ways he could never imagine, and that the real challenge was just beginning. The news spread like wildfire. The newspapers began to speculate about the mysterious businessman who had adopted a street girl. Some painted him as a hero, others insinuated dark motives. Social media was buzzing with theories and accusations, and Lysander's cell phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from journalists eager for a sensational story. In his office, sitting in front of a stack of documents and newspaper clippings, Lysander tried to remain calm while his lawyer, Dr. Roberts, explained the situation. "The matter is delicate, Lysander," the lawyer explained, adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses. "Without documentation, without a birth certificate, we can't prove her identity. And there's more. Some people are questioning your intentions." Lysander ran his hands over his tired face. He hadn't slept well in the last few nights, dividing himself between the hospital and desperate attempts to protect his professional reputation. "And what do you suggest?" "Honestly, step away. Let the state take care of her." your career, everything you've built. No! Lysander cut him off sharply. Next suggestion. The lawyer sighed. He knew that tone well. Then we're going to need specialized help. Social workers, psychologists, people who can attest to your good intentions. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Lily was beginning to recover physically. Her cheeks were gaining color, and she was already able to walk short distances around the room. But there was something different about her behavior. At night, when she thought she was alone, she cried softly, calling for someone. Lysander didn't. Yet no, it was on one of these nights that he heard her murmur, "Mommy, why did you leave me? Why does everyone leave me?" Those words hit him like a punch in the stomach. Sitting in the armchair in the room, pretending to be asleep, Lysander felt tears, something that hadn't happened in years, running down his face. The next morning, he began his own investigation. With the help of the florist, whose name was Mrs. Maria and had become a constant presence at the hospital, he began to gather information about Lily's past. "She appeared in the neighborhood about 4 years ago," said Mrs. Maria, while arranging a vase of daisies in the hospital room. "Always with her mother, a young, beautiful woman, but with a lost look. The girl was already blind, but her mother took care of her as best she could. And what happened to the mother? Nobody knows for sure. One day she started acting strangely, talking to herself, shouting that they were after her. Then she simply disappeared. The girl was left alone on the street until Lucky found her." Each new piece of information was like a piece of a painful puzzle. Lysander hired private investigators, scoured hospital records, orphanages, anywhere that might have some information about Lily or her mother. Meanwhile, at the hospital, a new battle was unfolding. The administration, pressured by the media and anonymous calls, began to question Lily's prolonged stay. "She is already medically cleared," argued the hospital director. "We can't keep her here indefinitely." Lysander knew it was true. But where would he take her? His luxurious penthouse wasn't prepared to receive a child, much less one with special needs. And there was Lucky, who kept sleeping on the sidewalk outside the hospital, refusing to leave. It was Mrs. Maria who offered the first practical solution. "My daughter is a teacher of special needs children. She can help Lily adapt, teach you how to care for her properly." The offer of help was like a ray of sunshine amidst the storm. Lysander began to transform his apartment. He hired accessibility specialists, bought adapted furniture, installed audio systems in every room. Every detail was designed to create a safe and welcoming environment. But not everything was practical. Concerns. There were moments of pure magic, like when Lily touched a piano for the first time in the hospital's music therapy room. Her small fingers glided across the keys with surprising delicacy, and a smile lit up her face. "How did you know how to play?" Lysander asked, amazed. "I didn't," she replied, laughing. "I just felt the music inside me." Those moments of joy, however, were frequently interrupted by nightmares. Lily would wake up screaming, calling for her mother, trembling with fear of being abandoned again. On one of these nights, something different happened. In the midst of a particularly intense nightmare, she reached out in the dark, seeking some comfort. Lysander, who was sleeping in the armchair next to her, held her small hand in his. "I'm here," he whispered. "I won't leave you alone." Lily squeezed his hand tightly. "Promise?" "I promise." It was at that moment that Lysander understood. He wasn't just taking care of an abandoned child. He was learning to love, to truly care, for someone besides himself. It was a scary and wonderful feeling at the same time, but fate had other plans. The next morning, a social worker appeared at the hospital with disturbing news. A woman had come forward, claiming to be Lily's aunt. "She has documents, old photos," explained the social worker, "and she wants custody of the girl." Lysander's world seemed to collapse. He looked at Lily, who was playing with Lucky in the hospital garden, oblivious to the approaching storm. How could he protect her? How could he prevent her from being taken away from him just now, when they had finally found each other? The answer would come in a way that no one could have predicted, and it would change their lives forever. Lily's alleged aunt's name was Regina Santos. She was a well-groomed woman who presented herself well and spoke fluently. She brought with her a folder full of yellow documents and old photographs that seemed to prove her story. But there was something in her eyes, a calculating glint that made Lysander feel a shiver of discomfort. "I've been looking for her for years," Regina said, her voice laden with an emotion that didn't reach her eyes. "After my sister, after she got sick, I lost contact with both of them. Imagine my surprise when I saw the story in the newspapers." Lysander watched her every gesture, every word carefully chosen. Something wasn't right. The photos she showed were too old, some already faded, showing a baby that could be any child. The documents seemed authentic, but there were inconsistencies in the dates. It was Mrs. Maria who first expressed her suspicions. One afternoon, while Regina was talking to the social workers, the florist pulled Lysander aside. "That woman is lying," she whispered, her voice trembling with worry. "I knew Lily's mother. I saw them together for years. This Regina never showed up, never helped with anything. And there's more. The other day, I saw her talking to a suspicious man on the corner of the hospital. They were arguing about money." Lysander's heart froze. He had already heard stories about people who exploited special needs children, using them to get government benefits or, worse, to beg on the streets. But before he could investigate further, the transfer of custody process was already underway. "It's standard procedure," explained the social worker with a tone of false compassion. "She is a blood relative. She has supporting documents. You, on the other hand, have no legal ties to the girl." That night, alone in his apartment, Lysander felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. How would he explain it to Lily? How could he protect her without seeming like an obsessive madman in the eyes of the law? His phone rang. It was his lawyer. "I got some information about this Regina," said Dr. Roberts. "She has a police record. Nothing serious enough to prevent custody, but there are reports of neglect with other children." Meanwhile, at the hospital, Lily felt that something was wrong. The adults were whispering in the corners. The nurses treated her with a different kind of pity, and even Lucky seemed more agitated than usual. "Something's going on, isn't it?" she asked Lysander when he went to visit her the next morning. Her small voice trembled with fear. Lysander sat next to her on the bed, holding her hand. How to explain to a child that the adult world was so complicated, so full of cruel rules? "Lily," he began, choosing each word carefully, "a person has appeared who says she's your aunt. She wants to take you to live with her." The girl's face paled. Her fingers squeezed Lysander's hand tightly. "No," she whispered, "I don't want to go. I want to stay with you and Lucky." "I know, little one. I want you to stay too, but—" "Please," she begged, tears running down her face. "Don't let her take me. I'm scared." It was the first time Lysander had seen Lily truly terrified. It wasn't the normal fear of a child facing changes. It was a deep, visceral terror, as if she felt something that others couldn't see. The days that followed were a nightmare. Regina began to make daily visits, always accompanied by the social worker. She brought gifts that Lily refused to touch, spoke with an artificial sweetness that made the girl shrink into the bed. Lucky, who had always been a docile dog, growled every time Regina approached. On one of these visits, when she tried to touch Lily, the dog almost bit her. "That animal is dangerous!" Regina shouted, pretending to be frightened. "He needs to be removed immediately." It was the last straw. That same afternoon, Lucky was banned from entering the hospital. The dog began to sleep on the sidewalk, howling all night while Lily cried in her room. Lysander was desperate. He hired more investigators, spent fortunes on lawyers, but the process followed its relentless course. Regina had all the necessary documents, all the authorizations. The law was on her side. One night, when everyone had already left, Lysander found Lily sitting on the bed, hugging her knees, trembling. "She's not my aunt," whispered the girl. "My mother didn't have a sister. She told me that many times before she left." That revelation was all Lysander needed, but how to prove it? How to fight against seemingly legal documents with only the word of a child? The answer came unexpectedly. Mrs. Maria, who never failed to bring fresh flowers to the room, discovered through her connections in the neighborhood that Regina was part of a larger scheme. She looked for vulnerable children, forged documents, and used them to get government benefits. But before they could use this information, the unthinkable happened. On a cold Monday morning, Lysander arrived at the hospital and found Lily's room empty. Regina had obtained a court order to take her away during the night. The despair that took over Lysander was something he had never felt before. It wasn't just fear or worry. It was a physical pain, as if part of his heart had been torn out. Lucky, who was still sleeping on the sidewalk outside the hospital, began to sniff the air frantically, barking in a specific direction. It was then that Lysander had an idea. If there was someone who could find Lily, it was that skinny, loyal dog who had never abandoned her. But time was against them. With each passing hour, Lily could be farther away, more scared, more lost. And somewhere in the city, a blind girl cried silently, hoping that someone would find her before it was too late. The search for Lily consumed Lysander completely. His office, once impeccable, turned into an improvised operations center. Maps of the city covered the walls, marked with red dots indicating possible locations where Regina might be. His cell phone wouldn't stop ringing. They were informants, private detectives, people from the neighborhood who knew the girl. Mrs. Maria mobilized the entire network of street vendors and merchants in the area. "We are the eyes of the street," she said, distributing photos of Lily among her acquaintances. "Someone will see something." Lucky had become a constant presence alongside Lysander. The dog, who before was just the faithful companion of a blind girl, now seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. His sad eyes followed every movement of the businessman, as if begging him to continue searching. The nights were the worst. Lysander could barely sleep, tormented by nightmares where he heard Lily calling for him in the darkness. He would wake up in a cold sweat, his hands trembling as he picked up the phone to check if there was any news. "You need to take care of yourself," insisted his secretary, worried about his increasingly haggard appearance. "You won't help the girl if you get sick." But how could he rest? Every minute that passed was another minute of suffering for Lily. His apartment, which he had prepared with so much care to receive her, remained empty, the adapted toys still in their packaging, waiting for a child who didn't get to use them. It was during one of these sleepless nights that the first real lead emerged. A lady who sold candy at a traffic light called Mrs. Maria, saying she had seen a girl with dark glasses being dragged by a woman towards a peripheral neighborhood of the city. "The girl was crying softly," said the lady, "and the woman, she wasn't gentle. She pulled the child's arm hard, cursed when she stumbled." Lysander and Lucky immediately went to the indicated location. The neighborhood was a maze of narrow streets and old houses. The businessman, accustomed to luxurious environments, now walked through dark alleys, guided only by determination and Lucky's scent. For days they scoured every corner of that region. Lysander showed Lily's photo to everyone he met, offered rewards, begged for information. Some people said they had seen a similar girl begging for money in different parts of the city. Others spoke of a woman who forced children to beg, collecting the money at the end of the day. Lysander's heart ached with each new piece of information. The idea of Lily being exploited, scared, alone in the dark, that for her was even deeper, consumed him from within. His impeccable suit was now always rumpled, his beard unshaven, his eyes red from crying in secret. One afternoon, while investigating another false lead, Lysander found a group of children playing on the street. One of them approached, hesitant. "Are you looking for the blind girl?" he asked in a low voice. "I saw her. The bad woman hits her. When she can't ask for money, right?" The anger that Lysander felt at that moment was different from anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't the controlled irritation of business negotiations, nor the frustration of difficult meetings. It was a primitive fury, born of the purest love and despair. That same night, following the child's directions, Lysander and Lucky arrived at an abandoned house in the back of a vacant lot. The place was desolate. Broken windows, peeling walls, a smell of mold and neglect that made the stomach turn. It was Lucky who first noticed. The dog began to bark frantically, scratching at a door at the back of the house. Lysander approached with his heart pounding, and then he heard a soft, almost inaudible cry coming from inside. "Lily!" he called, his voice trembling. "Lily, are you there?" The crying stopped for a moment. Then a small, scared voice replied, "Uncle Lysander." Those two words were all he needed to hear. With a strength he didn't know he possessed, Lysander broke down the door. What he found inside the dark room almost made him collapse. Lily was huddled in a corner, her clothes dirty, and torn, visible marks of violence on her thin arms. When he picked her up in his arms, the girl clung to him as if her life depended on it. "I knew it," she sobbed. "I knew you were going to find me." But the night was not over yet. The sound of approaching footsteps alerted Lysander. Regina was coming back. He needed to act fast. He had to get Lily out of there before that woman could hurt her again. However, what happened next would change the course of their lives forever, in a way that no one could have predicted. Because sometimes the real miracle isn't just in finding someone lost, but in discovering that you yourself were lost until that moment. The sound of footsteps grew closer and closer. Lysander, with Lily in his arms and Lucky by his side, desperately looked for a way out. The girl trembled, clinging to his neck, whispering words of fear that broke his heart. It was then that something unexpected happened. A familiar voice echoed from outside. "Regina Santos, you're surrounded." It was Mrs. Maria. The florist wasn't alone. With her were dozens of people from the neighborhood, street vendors, merchants, residents who knew Lily from the streets. Everyone had come together to protect the little blind girl who, without knowing it, had touched their hearts. Regina tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The community that she so despised now formed an impenetrable circle around her. Among the crowd, a figure emerged that no one expected to see, a woman of fragile appearance, prematurely grey hair and frightened eyes. "Helena," Mrs. Maria whispered, immediately recognizing the woman. "Lily's mother." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Lily, still in Lysander's arms, turned her head towards the voice she hadn't heard in so long. "Mommy?" Her voice was just a breath of hope. Helena approached slowly, her hands trembling. "My daughter. My little one." The story that followed left everyone in silence. Helena had been involuntarily committed to a mental institution, not because she was dangerous or incapable, but because she had discovered a scheme to exploit vulnerable people. Regina was just one piece of a larger gear. She identified fragile people, separated families, and then used the victims for her scams. "They drugged me," Helena explained, tears running down her marked face. "They said I was crazy, that I was imagining things. When I finally managed to get out, my Lily had disappeared. I searched for so long. Regina, seeing herself cornered, began to shout accusations, trying to divert attention. But her voice was silenced by the arrival of more people, all victims of her scams, all with similar stories of destroyed families and ruined lives. Lysander watched everything with a mixture of relief and disbelief. The girl in his arms, who had suffered so much, finally had her story complete. She wasn't an abandoned orphan. She was a loved child, separated from her mother by human cruelty. But there were even more surprises to come. Among the documents found in the house where Lily was imprisoned, there was enough evidence to dismantle the entire exploitation network. Regina didn't act alone. She had connections with influential people, including corrupt officials from institutions that were supposed to protect the vulnerable. The most painful revelation, however, came from Helena. During her captivity in the clinic, she had met other mothers separated from their children. Some never found them again. Others discovered that their children had been taken to distant places, forced to beg or work in inhumane conditions. "That's why I couldn't give up," said Helena, now sitting next to her daughter in the hospital, where everyone had gone to take care of Lily's injuries. "I knew my little one was somewhere, needing me." Lysander watched the reunion of mother and daughter with a lump in his throat. Part of him feared losing Lily now that her mother had returned. But Helena, with a wisdom that only a mother possesses, perceived his fear. "You saved my daughter," she said, holding the businessman's hand. "You did what I couldn't do for so long. That makes you part of our family forever." In the months that followed, life took a turn that no one could have predicted. Lysander offered his apartment for Helena and Lily to live in. It was too spacious for him alone, he argued. The place he had prepared with so much care for one child now housed two souls who needed to reconnect and heal. Helena, after receiving proper treatment and psychological support, proved to be a brilliant woman. Her experience as a victim of the system transformed her into a fierce advocate for the rights of the vulnerable. With Lysander's support, she began working on social projects, helping other separated families to reunite. Lily blossomed like a flower after the storm. With the love of her mother and the affection of Lysander, she smiled again, sang, explored the world with her unique sensitivity. Her hands, once chapped from feeling the ground for coins, now glided gracefully across the piano that Lysander installed in the living room. Lucky, of course, gained a place of honor in the family. He was no longer just the dog that guided a blind girl. He was the living symbol of a loyalty that had helped to reunite people separated by fate. Mrs. Maria continued to bring flowers every day, now no longer to a hospital room, but to a home full of life and love. Her colorful daisies decorated the table where the family, now complete, gathered to share stories, dreams, and plans for the future. Lysander changed profoundly. The cold and calculating businessman gave way to a man who learned that true wealth is not in the numbers of a bank account, but in the smiles we can provoke, in the lives we can touch, in the love we can give and receive. On a quiet afternoon, while watching Lily play with Lucky in the garden under Helena's watchful eye, Lysander realized a fundamental truth. Sometimes we need to get completely lost to find our true path. He had started this journey thinking he was saving a blind girl, but in the end it was she who helped him see what really mattered in life. The story of Lily, Helena, and Lysander spread throughout the city, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a testament to the power of love, persistence, and human kindness. It proved that even in the darkest situations, there is always a light of hope. Sometimes all we need is to learn to see with the heart, as a little blind girl had taught everyone.